making the headlines across the country. We have the analyst in. It's an interactive conversation. And of course, we'd love to get your thoughts and opinions as well. You can send your messages through via WhatsApp 0809 440 You can also tweet at Smooth981. And we're also streaming live on our YouTube channel, so you can catch the live stream on YouTube. It's Smooth981. And don't forget to subscribe. The analysts are in this morning. It's AB Bozimo and Joseph Obari in his NLC mode.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Zibby.
Zibby. Morning.
I have to disclaim that too. I'm not for any party.
He's not. It was
Good
just the
morning,
hat.
Zibby.
The hat was giving labor.
Exactly. And good morning, Sir Joseph. Great to be here. Happy Friday to all the wonderful listeners out there.
All right. Again, Joseph is not part of the NLC. That was a joke, just in case. All right, our first headline comes from Punch. Labour wants 497,000 naira. FG laments paucity of funds. And this one's coming from Punch. AB?
It's important to realize that there was a committee set up on January, was it 30th? Initially budgeted to have 1 billion naira to have this discussion. And then on second thoughts, they cut the money to only 500 million naira to discuss minimum wage. I just want to put that in context. And since that date till now, for whatever reason, it seems to be impossible for Labour and government to come to an agreement. Labour came down somewhere from their 600 or something 100,000 to only 497,000, and government jumped up from 54,000 all the way to 57,000. So you can see there's a huge gap in between. But the fact is, let's step away from these numbers and understand what really we're talking about. These numbers that Labour is asking for are supposed to be the minimum wage, i.e. the lowest paid person in an organization, according to them, should earn 497 on Labour's part or 57 on the government's part. What is the wage supposed to do, actually? The wage is supposed to make it possible for you to afford fundamentals and a bit more in life. So here it is. How come Labour is not talking about the government making things more affordable? I've always talked about being a fuel subsidy hawk, but I would only want that fuel subsidy removed when other things are in place or in a graduated way. For government to just wake up in the person of the president and just on one day inaugural statement say subsidies removed when there was even a whole month left, I think was premature and in hindsight, absolutely the wrong way to go about doing what could even be argued is a good policy. So they keep talking numbers back and forth. Labour say they have made their calculations based on cost of living. Government says there's no money. I beg to question government position. There is money. However, workers are not a priority, evidently, because it is obvious when we hear the other things that government chooses to spend money on and their priorities, that the human element is not one of the priorities. I just think Labour is not necessarily going about this in all the right ways. Labour should be making their presence felt in forcing, if they want to have a say, in encouraging, I take that word back, because there were some words in this story where they said the government was forced to raise. No. This is a conversation. And I think even the way it's reported has a way of creating antagonism. There is a dialogue ongoing. I think Labour and government have common purpose and must find common ground. But it should be really about making things more affordable, because never forget that organized labor is at most 4.5% of the working force in Nigeria. And there are many people, therefore, the majority who are not in organized labor, who may not be covered by these agreements. I think it should be about making life affordable for all, so that whatever you earn can, quote unquote, take you home and beyond.
All right, thank you, AB, for that. Joseph, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, it's just that the perspective that these negotiations involve the organized private sector as well. But the challenge is that what the Labour is asking for, how realistic is it? In all economic indices, how realistic is it? you know, because when you now look at the number of workers involved, then the different tiers of government, I mean, the level or the state level, there's a called sub-national, so-called local government level, you're saying that they should be able to pay this as well. So when you take all this into context, then of course the challenges are there. Like Ebi said, yeah, it's not as if Nigeria doesn't have money, but how are we prioritizing this? Now, when you juxtapose how government of officials spend money or decisions that government make against what is supposed to be realistic, then that's why I'm sure that's why Labour really insists on these things. Yeah, that's just the point. But how realistic is that expectation? And I think that the negotiations should be able to tackle that question.
All right, let's look at messages. Abbas says, so let us assume that the federal government agrees to pay 400,000 naira as minimum wage. Will people who have domestic workers pay the same? And how about the states, or the minimum wage is just about federal government workers? Who are just a small fraction of the population. So many states are still finding it difficult to even pay the 30,000 naira minimum wage. Labor needs to face reality and stop making demands that may likely throw some people out of jobs. Fabian from Ekwe says, my concern regarding the minimum wage is why are there no laid down standard criteria for calculating it? For example, based on the economy, earning capacity, etc. Labor should focus on this and also put pressure on the government to bring down their own costs as well as salaries and create a more enabling environment in the country. Another message, this one is from Chibike. Chibike says, for me, the main issue with the minimum wage conversation is all the other wages that are above minimum. What will their wage now come up to?
Aha.
Exactly.
Cisco Delgado says, I see 1000% inflation looming. Dakbo from Adeniran Ogunsoya says, it's vehemently obvious that labor is being unrealistic and making humongous demands. Tinubu's reforms keep Nigerians on edge 1 year after. Suffering and smiling is rampant and happens to be the order of the day. Honestly speaking, all these leaders only have their own self-centered interests at heart, but we can only pray that God will show mercy and turn around the mind of our leaders to do the right thing. We all hoped and believed that the president would bring some improvements from the past presidents, but he still has to prove otherwise. Inflation is killing commodity prices, and most Nigerians have been converted to beggars of bread. All right, and he sent his congratulations to Lamido Sanusi on his reinstatement. All right, let's move on to the next headline, and this one comes from Premium Times. Kano lawmakers set to, okay, this is done now. So, Dakwa, you definitely were looking at the headlines ahead of time. Good on you. Yes, but Joseph, do you want to talk a little bit on that?
Yeah, I think that it's sad that politicians in Kano are just playing politics. And it started from Ganduje, who, because of his personal disagreement with the emir, decided to whittle down his power, got the House of Assembly to enact a law that created 5 emirates, split one emirate into 5, and then deposed the emir, then emir of Kano. There are laws going far back as the 1950s that actually created that emirate, and have been backed with several other laws until when Ganduje came. I don't know the traditional reasons behind having one powerful emirate, as such as Kano was at the time Sanusi was there as the emir. But then the fact that it is the same instrument, the instrumentality of the House of Assembly that each governor is using, that's what really worries me. The same House of Assembly that passed that law in 2019 is the one that has now passed a new law that has now dissolved the previously existing 5 emirates and restored the one powerful Kano emirate, with Sanusi reinstated into office. So it's a very sad development, in fact, in the sense that there seems not to be any objectivity on the part of the politicians in Kano to respect their own traditional institution. Yeah, because the Kano Emirate was one of the most revered, more or less. I mean, when you talk about Sokoto, you talk about the Kano and Borno, that's Borno, and then, of course, Kano and so on. These are more or less like institutions that had been in existence, you know.
I mean, when you talk about politics, I think it was actually Kwankwaso who, first of all, elevated Sanusi to the position, on almost appearing to help spite Jonathan that time when Sanusi was set aside as CBN governor. And then, I think, it may need to be confirmed, but is there a report that the FG has temporarily stopped or paused this restoration? There's something like that hovering around in the news, but that may need to be confirmed. Okay. Well, it's an unfolding story, so there could be many sides to it.
All right. So, Joseph, you answered a question before I asked it. I want to talk about traditional values being eroded by politics. Which way forward? It does seem like it's really hard to sort of differentiate these two institutions right now.
Well, somehow you blame the traditional leaders too, because they have been hankering that their role should be written into the constitution. They want to be, and somehow there has to be a level of control which governors should have over these institutions. But some of the traditional structures are so very powerful. I mean, let's take, for example, the Oba of Benin. What should be the interaction between the governor and the Oba of Benin, for example? Babangida deposed Dasuki. We all know that. So government is such a powerful institution that you cannot simply leave any aspect of the society free on its own too. So there has to be some control. But what is the nature of that control and relationship? What should it be? That's the question.
All right. Let's look at some messages coming through. Emeka says, why do we always expect labor to be realistic when the government has never lived up to their least responsibility? Aderemi says, I don't think any employer should pay less than 80,000 as minimum wage. Dan Okuda says, what is happening in Kano is a dangerous precedent. Politicians should leave our traditional institutions out of their office. And Adegboyega says, this is how Labour and FG will continue to drag this conversation till the end of the president's administration. There are no negotiations. The truth is, there's an agreement between between persons in NLC and in government to continue to deceive Nigerians. I'm sure you have evidence of that somewhere, Adegboyega.
Exactly. Quite an assertion.
Right. And another message says the reinstalled Emir Sanusi is just a matter of time considering how he was dethroned, and now that his own person or people are in power, it favors his coming back. It's all about which side of the coin you belong to. You're listening to Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1. Do stay with us. The conversation continues. Hey, what's going on? You're listening to Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1. It's Zibby here with our analysts, AB Bozimo and Joseph Obari. We're looking at the news stories making the headlines. We'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts with us. 0809 440 981 via WhatsApp. You can also tweet at Smooth 981. We're also streaming live on YouTube, so you can catch the live stream and you can also post a comment on there. Next headline comes from Daily Post. Joseph, I'm bringing this to you. Electoral Act Amendment. Bill seeks president's rights to vote in Nigeria's elections.
I think the amendments to the Electoral Act should go beyond just trying to cater for detained persons and prisoners. We should begin to have Nigerians in diaspora be able to participate in elections. We should be able to have fundamental amendment to our Electoral Act such that you can vote electronically. I don't know why it is impossible for Nigerians to be able to vote electronically. If we can transact businesses using our ATM cards, do all kinds of things, we've got to that level. We have Nigerians who can write programs that can be used. And if we can't do it, or we're afraid of the integrity of the system, we've got organizations that can give us, and it's not, look, the electronic voting machine, is this all over the world? I mean, it's like a POS machine, a little bigger than that, and you can use it to vote. Why is it so difficult? They've collected people's fingerprints, they've taken pictures of people. So what is so difficult in harnessing the existing data and be able to create a system that is holistic, complete? So I don't understand. So today this piecemeal, we chip at this part of the act, we chip at this other part of and this actually was a bill sponsored by an NGO that is even behind this. It wasn't even the initiative of government. So we have government politicians who are not even thinking deep. They're not thinking deep. So this amendment aims to, they are going to amend certain section 9, 12, 13, 40, and 152 of the existing Electoral Act, simply to say when any person is in detention, and I'm assuming it's a long-term detention, right? You have a right to vote. So there should be created registration zones around the prisons or in the prisons, and so on and so forth, and that prisoners should have a right to transfer their polling units from wherever it was to the new custodial center and all that. That's all the amendment that this is about. It's a private bill, sponsored by a bill sponsored by an NGO. So, but those critical things that our own legislators should be concerned about the integrity of an electoral system, it's not being done. And that's where I want to see actions being taken. Not these,
AB?
As Joseph has very correctly said, if it is possible for any one of us to take an ATM card and put it in a machine anywhere on the surface of planet Earth and have access to your single solitary account, then there is really nothing that should stand in the way of us rolling out electronic voting. The NBA, as a professional body, was one of the first to do this electronic voting. It's been so successful. My institution, the NIA, Nigerian Institute of Architects, has also adopted it. So from all over the world, once you are pre-qualified, you can vote during a certain time frame. It's straightforward. It's not rocket science anymore. The processes are very relatively easy to follow. And it doesn't mean that might be the only way. But like you said, for diaspora voting and for people who are not in station at the time of voting, it should be an option. But that's just to add to what Joseph very correctly said.
All right, let's move on to Daily Trust. Tinubu demands sub-regional action to boost intra-African trade.
Or what? Now, the second part of that is this. You are demanding action. There's a statement that's always put out there. Build the roads, they will come. How much trade is Tinubu, as the head of ECOWAS right now, promoting within the borders of his country before you now look outside? And I know it's possible to walk and chew gum at the same time. Yes, you can focus internally and think externally. But I mean, during the time when some of those countries left ECOWAS, I remember somebody drew a map. There was ECOWAS and there was ECOIS, which excluded those countries. But Here it is talking about the ECOWAS, the East African Community, the SADC, South African Development Community, and generally across Africa. We know that there are borders. Right now, if you wanted to fly to someone like Cameroon next door to us, you might have to fly to France and come back to Cameroon. The connectivity across Africa must improve. Otherwise, trade itself can't. And also, the manning of borders has to be more user-friendly. Right now, border crossings are often a horror show themselves. So you want to promote trade, excellent objective. It's going to, once again, go through dialogue, agreements, treaties, and preferential treatment. It should be more advantageous to me to trade with my neighbor to the left, north, east, north, or west than I should always try to trade with someone in another country or continent. And that should go for the entire continent. Recently, Dangote complained he needs 35 visas, different visas, to go around Africa. And that's Africa's, I think, richest man. If he is getting that kind of problem and it's affecting him, what will it be for Joe Blogs? So we agree that this is a good initiative, even to maximize the African continental free trade area. Its effectiveness will be enhanced if these trade barriers are, let's say, dissolved, not entirely eliminated, but at least made more user-friendly. But it's not going to be based on any demand from any one person. It's going to be based on rational thinking, putting structures and standards in place, and encouraging the widespread wholesale development of the people. When people are in a better position, they have more aspiration, they have more income, and therefore they can promote trade. So it's not enough to just talk about the policy. The people ultimately will drive this policy. If you're not focused on the people, and you are more focused on the ruling class, as is pretty common across Africa, you are not going anywhere with these demands for improved trade.
All right, let's look at some of the messages coming through. This one is from Gary Newton. He says, it's not about increasing salaries, it's about stabilizing the economy. Ibukun says, the negotiations between the federal government and Labour will continue until they exhaust the 500 million naira. 90 billion for Hajj, 14 billion to renovate the Senate, 15 billion to renovate VP's residence. And you tell people there is no money. Electronic voting can work when NIMSI servers are always down, as people who are trying to link NIN to meters to get passports or even SIM cards.
That's very true.
We are not serious with serious issues. Abbas says, we hope that when we talk about Nigerians in diaspora, we're not limiting it to Nigerians living in the West alone, because Chad, Niger, Togo, and so many other places are also diaspora. Are we really ready for the challenges that will pose for us? These things are beyond as simple as ABC. Wendy says they should let Nigerians at home vote first. JP says it's not difficult to vote electronically. It's by choice, so the system or the elections can be manipulated. Where there is chaos, there is gain. Moving on to the next headline, and this one is coming from Daily Post. FG launches information portal. Gateway to Nigeria.
Okay. I'm taking that, right?
Yes, Joseph.
Yes.
Okay. So well, it's a very brilliant idea. But it's a shame that it is not a new thing. It's not as if it was a new thing. It's been in existence before, but it never was functioning. In fact, the minister said, he said that it's been in existence before, but it's just badly managed. So it just goes to the point. That's the point I want to make. It's not a matter of putting something there. If you have gone to some government websites and see that they can't even update information on their own website. So yeah, maybe I hope that with this kind of minister we have, maybe we may be able to see action. But how sustainable is this going to be over time? When he leaves office, will he be there? People seeking information. It's a very brilliant idea. And it's supposed to be something that comes natural to the Ministry of Information, that every person who wants to get information about Nigeria has a portal they can go to. That such a portal was left dormant, inactive by anybody in the Ministry of Information of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is a damnable thing. And it's sad that nobody answers for it. The minister had just come, okay, we revive it, we are now working. And I praise this minister. He shows that he's a true communication expert, and some of the way he's handling information so far, particularly this accountability thing they are doing in Abuja now at the radio house, where ministers are supposed to come and say what they are doing for the people and answer media questions and so on. So it's a brilliant idea, but the sustainability is always been my concern. How are government officials and every civil servant, somebody who is working for this government, for the people, committed to ensuring that things are done effectively? Like, just like somebody lamented, yeah, it's not difficult to initiate anything, but sustaining it, the sustainability, that's a challenge.
All right, thanks for that, Joseph. Let's look at the next headline. This one, AB, did you want to add something to that?
I just want to say, people can get information about Nigeria. Right now, the world has changed from having sole portals. There are too many sources of information. It's not a bad one to add an official source, but people who want to know about Nigeria find out about Nigeria from a variety of sources, both formal and informal. So the lack of information is not the problem. I think what we should be doing as a country is creating enough good information that people can rely on to make decisions about investment, about tourism, about security, about risks. But it's a good idea, yes. Sustainability question, that's the question that we always ask about.
All right, Daily Post, reps panel summons discos, gencos over failure to perform social responsibility.
Can you imagine that in a country that has no light fundamentally, and assorted bands, A band, B band, whatever, you are calling the energy people to talk about corporate social responsibility? What can be a better corporate social responsibility than providing light? A House of Representatives committee is, okay, they're on corporate social responsibility. I think they should step back and let the people do their first need, which is provide power. When they've done that successfully, then we can talk about CSR. At this moment, they are failing in that fundamental responsibility. So honestly, if a corpse gives me CSR, that CSR is tainted. Right now, as far as I'm concerned, the Gencos, Discos, and every other school you can call are not living up to their creed. So the call for CSR from them is pointless, is out of order, and is not the right time to consider that. Give us lights, and all other things shall be added unto you. Even God said, let there be light, before he asked for anything else. If you do not have light, you do not need CSR. You need light. Let's go back to the fundamentals. I know it's a committee. They are paid a huge salary each month, so they have to look like they're doing something reasonable. What CSR is the House of Representatives doing, apart from the project that they direct to themselves in their various local governments? CSR, listen, I love the idea of CSR. I'm a socially minded person myself. But when you want to engage discos and all those things, talk about them in an energy poor nation like Nigeria, bringing light. Maybe when it comes to prioritizing, I don't think CSR should be the priority of the discos and gencos. That's all I'm saying.
So let me just, with hindsight and certain experience interface with the National Assembly, I can tell you that this is just basically parliamentary bullying for a particular reason. I don't want to be, I mean, we're on air. It's a game. It's a game. And it's sad. It's sad that, just like Ibi said, when we have got serious issues to discuss about power supply, a committee on the matter like such as power generation of power, we sit down and all they are talking about is that Genco, Deco, whatever, it should come and do CSR. CSR, please, for goodness sake. We are not dumb in this country. We understand what this is about. When you appear for committees, you know the kind of games they play. So it's so nauseating, and that this should happen. Where I am in Abuja, we've not had electricity for more than 10 hours. I'm in Band A, for goodness sake. Band A, we've not had electricity for 10 hours, running generator. And people are sitting down in the National Assembly and saying, inviting Genco and Disco and whatever to come and talk about CSR to communities, for goodness sake.
All right, let's look at a few messages. Joseph Menu says, from this administration, okay, Nigerians deserve a 365-day survival award from this administration because the elites, the government, and National Assembly know the mess they've plunged the country into because these policies have not favored citizens. Just imagine the National Assembly more concerned about the anthem than hunger, inflation, and insecurities. By the way, AB and Joseph, do you guys know the anthem? Do you know the words yet?
Somebody said we have to learn the old national anthem.
Of all the priorities, that is what the first, second, and third reading to committee. As I say, these are committees. Never in the history of the world has a small group of people been paid so much wastefully to do so little for the largest population on Africa. It's a pity. It's a disgrace. The National Assembly continues to perpetuate pedestrian thinking in situations like this.
Wow, interesting times, really. Ajibade says, listening to Smooth from everyone is intellectually stimulating. Well done, you guys. Thank you so much for that. Joseph, I see your passion, but you forget that these people only do what favors them to rig when it comes to elections. Izehi says, are the lawmakers truly interested in credible elections? They want to be able to manipulate the system for their own benefit. Bas says, when we raise questions whenever the center tries to call out the sub-regions, then we are giving the governors excuses to continue to do as they like. Everything shouldn't always be about the federal government. What are our governors doing with increased allocations since the removal of subsidies? And Cruz says, I think we expect too much from our politicians because we think they should represent all our interests. In my opinion, they are like Univision farmers who concentrate on their specific product as things come and go one by one, rather than a manager of an organization who looks at things from a general overview point and then narrowing down to each matter. All right. We're out of time. I can't take any more messages. I am sorry, but thank you for listening. Thanks for your messages. And of course, special thanks to our wonderful analysts as well, AB and Joseph, who, by the way, are learning the new anthem as we speak, I hope.
People of my age knew the old anthem. Don't forget that. My dad taught me when I was a child.
When we get fed up with Nigeria, we sing the old one. Nigeria will heal.
Nigeria will heal me.
All right, AB.
Have a great weekend. You may disagree with me or agree. Hit me up at AB Bozimo on all platforms.
All right. Thank you, Joseph, as well, for coming through. Have a brilliant day ahead. Do stay with us. There is a lot more to come on the Smooth Breakfast. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you. Have a great weekend. Enjoy.
Thank you, and you too.